The sun has left and forgot.
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief storymaker at Elkins Consulting. If you've listened to even 2 episodes of this podcast, you know how important it is to me that people know the stories that they tell affect their internal messages and definitely influence how people perceive them. And when it comes to communication, those perceptions are the key to satisfaction in every single relationship. I've had the honor of working with today's guest, doing public speaking workshop. But what I loved about this that was different was that I got to also incorporate StrengthsFinder into the work I was doing with the executive leadership team that my guest today, Lindsey Van Gorp, introduced me to. And before we jump in, I have to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Arminda Lindsey, who introduced us a few months back. Arminda was one of the first coaches that I worked with, and she gave me the gift of a session right before my first keynote. Her comments to me made a huge difference, not only in how I presented the keynote, but in also how I approached debriefing myself afterward so that I could honor and celebrate the things I did right, and so that I could learn to improve for the future. Not only did she give me those gifts, she also sent me a couple of books as gifts that I've then returned the favor, sent her a couple of fun books, but also I've paid it forward, sharing those books that she gave me with some of my clients. So Arminda Lindsey, I hope you hear this, and I hope that you honor it and hold it and know how much Lindsey and I appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's begin. Lindsey, you know, because you've listened to a couple of these episodes, that I love to start by asking my guest to share something about themselves that most people wouldn't know about them. And a few people have said, well, I'm an open book. And yet there's always something that either happened far in the past or as an internal dialogue that they don't usually share, that they can share. And the reason I ask this question is so that our audience gets a more complex view of who you are. Because we have a tendency to anchor people in time based on one interaction, one social media post, one aspect of who we are. And we're so much more complicated than that. Mm-hmm. So Lindsey, what do you think? What can you share with us?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, before you said most people say I'm an open book, I probably would have said, well, I'm an open book. But you're absolutely right. There's always those things, right? So I think if I go back to a moment in time, when I was in the 4th grade, I had an experience on the playground where one of my friends was being bullied, and I jumped in and just walloped the girl that was bullying her. So I bullied the bully, but it was out of protection for my friend. So just very out of character for me. I mean, I have not hit anyone since that day. So I'm happy to say that. But I just remember being called to the principal's office, and my dad was a school supply salesman, so he knew all of the administration. So they call my dad, and they are trying not to laugh because, you know, this is just
so out of
nowhere for Lindsey. Yes. Yes. And so they're trying to be stern, but also, you know, tell my dad what happened. And I got home that day, and I remember my dad telling me that he was proud of me. And I was like, well, this is interesting. Aren't I supposed to be in trouble? But he reflected, just pride for standing up for what I thought was right. And just kind of laughed about it too, which maybe that's the reason I haven't reacted that way since then is, you know, I wasn't shamed for that interaction, but it was definitely very out of character for me. And I don't tell that story to a lot of people. So that's the thing that
a great story. Oh my gosh, I love that story on so many levels. I mean, did you say 2nd grade? Is that right?
4th grade.
4th grade. Okay.
Somewhere in that.
Probably about 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere around 10 years old. And do you remember how it felt? I mean, I know you were worried because you didn't want to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. these talents that we have show up as early as 6, 8, 10 years old. So I'm actually hearing your talents right in your story, even that young, and your dad would hear them as well.
Yeah.
But when you think about right after how you felt and how the other two people that were directly involved reacted, and then the rest of the people that were witnesses or heard the story later, do you think about that at all?
Oh, I think about the reaction of my friend who was being bullied quite a bit, because I remember her just like total shock that I would have that kind of reaction. And I do actually think how that I hit that day. We ended up being friends throughout the rest of our middle school years. So we got past it, obviously. But I do think about like her initial reaction quite a bit, and just the shock value that it had. But
for
the
everybody.
repercussions, beyond that, I'd either blocked out or they just, I don't know. Or it's something not a lot of people know, so I don't talk.
Right. So the reason I ask about that and why we go into this, like uncovering the rest of the story, is that when you tell that story, what that says to me is that A, you won't tolerate when somebody's being treated badly. And to this day, you won't do that. You won't tolerate it. And it's hard because it's out of character for you to step up and step in. But you have zero stomach for allowing that behavior. And for our listeners, I'm just going to read off. Will you read off your top 5 talents for our listeners?
Yeah. Yep. So I have includer, positivity, woo, developer, and empathy.
So listeners, if you're unfamiliar with these talents, we will talk about each one a little bit throughout our conversation so that you can hear how this really gives us a clue as to how Lindsey approaches things. I don't think of this as a personality assessment or a label. I think about this as your most natural, intuitive approach to a project that lands in your lap or a problem that you need to solve is through this includer and positivity, which is the first thing you think about is how do we make sure we create an environment where everybody feels like they're part of the solution? That's the first thing. And I don't think like that. That is not my initial response. My initial response is, what's the fastest, most efficient route to get this done? I'm not really thinking about the people at all. And you do. So that's the first thing I was thinking about in terms of your story. The second thing I'm thinking about is that when you tell this story, I learned about you first, even if I didn't know your talents. That story would tell me a lot about who you are. But it also it helps me find that perspective of knowing that this had a huge ripple effect, even if you couldn't possibly know it, certainly not a 10. And years later, unless somebody says, remember that time you punched that girl on my behalf? Do you remember that? And you're like, yeah, I sure do. And that person says, from that moment forward, I realized I didn't have to tolerate that. I had somebody in my corner that was going to stand up for me. And it changed my whole life. It changed my whole outlook on who I am and what I can do. Right? Until they tell you that, you can't really know. And the friend now, the bully, you changed her. You showed her that her behavior was unacceptable in no uncertain terms, and that if she was going to continue to bully people, there were going to be consequences.
Lindsey's fist would be there.
Yeah. Well, if you hit her, can you imagine what somebody bigger and more angry would have done?
Right. Yep.
So what she learned, and this is obviously projection here or conjecture, is that if somebody as kind and happy is going to react that way to my behavior, then I need to change something.
Yeah.
Right?
I hope that's true conjecture.
Well, the lesson she learned in that moment was oh, I'm not going to just get away with this like I have.
Right.
And I think for people who behave badly, those consequences have to be startling and direct, which is exactly what you did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can't just go around punching people now to have those reactions, right? But we could, I guess, but I probably wouldn't have my job anymore. So I think it's finding a different way to have a similar effect, right? In how we communicate with those around us. And
which is calling people on it, being direct. Obviously, in most cases, we can't do it in a group setting. So I'm teaching, I'm doing public speaking for this executive leadership team, and somebody bullies somebody else or says something hurtful. I'm not going to, in that moment, say, whoa, wait a minute. Although it depends on the situation. There are times where I would, but mostly I would pull that person aside and say, hey, what you just said was really insulting, and that's not acceptable. So A, you need to apologize to that person. And B, I don't want to hear that again. That's not going to be tolerated around me. Or I will call you out in front of people next time.
Yeah. Yes. And you won't enjoy it. Yep. Clear is kind, right? I think that's something I'm trying to learn and use more effectively, because you're right. I mean, I have these strengths that do make me a happy, sometimes soft person when it comes to my communication. And I'm learning to remind myself, it's actually far more kind to the person I'm communicating with if I am direct and clear in my communication than if I'm softening the edges of what I'm really trying to get at. That doesn't help anybody. That's not an effective way to give feedback. So
that is music to my ears. It's music to my ears. The passive voice is, especially for somebody a little less conscious, people who can be like me. I can be very oblivious when somebody's giving me feedback. So I want somebody to just be direct and say, hey, you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And here's why.
Right.
Because I don't catch subtlety.
Yes. And I think, for that to be effective, and maybe this is my, relational strengths talking, but I feel like for that communication to be effective, you have to have that baseline relationship with that person. I mean, if someone I don't know is giving me what they think is clear feedback, I'm unclear on why they have the authority to tell me that, right? So I think part of that clarity is just having that relationship built where you can communicate those things to somebody.
Oh, that is such an important addition. I'm going off in this direction of be direct, and you're like, and pay attention to the person and the relationship you have. So this is why we're such a good complement in our strengths.
Yes.
We have to see it from both of those perspectives. Yeah. So I love that story. There are so many different directions we could go from here, but let's go. I mentioned that these strengths show up really early in our lives. And I have some theories, anecdotal evidence, that they show up very early, but then will be very influenced by people that do things differently, that have a different approach in our teens and throughout our 20s and early 30s. And so we try on other approaches to see what will work and what doesn't work. And it's kind of like trying on different identities, figuring out who we are based on what we see in the people we admire and respect around us. And then my experience is that people hit those mid to late 30s and start to refine their own approaches and kind of shed what didn't work for them. The relationships, the labels, the internal messages that are no longer working for them, and they start to embrace their talents that they started with.
Yeah.
So when you think about your training, part of why I wanted to interview you is because I have experience many years and probably a couple thousand people that I've coached using this tool, and probably 30 or more teams. And you just took the training earlier this year, 2025, spring.
Yep.
And obviously found it valuable enough to become a certified strengths finder coach, or at least to take the training to head that direction. And your employer supported you in this. So there are two questions that are coming out of this. One is, what was one thing that happened during the training that you realized, oh, wow, this tool is so much more than I thought it could be? And then a time when you got to apply it shortly after the training. So let's start with the aha moment.
Gosh. Yeah, it is still fresh. So it was just such a valuable experience all around. I honestly think when I think back to it, I felt like I was in this bubble of encouragement and just such a positive space with the people that were in my cohort. And to spend an entire week dedicated to what makes people unique and what makes them thrive was a dream. I wish every week looked like that. So one, it was just encouraging to get to dive into the content, but also I think the people that I had in my group, and I'm sure you probably had a similar experience, it's just like-minded people who want to see others succeed and grow, and, gain self-awareness. And so I think it was really a unique group of individuals that came together and, just really supported one another. I mean, you learn more about somebody in 5 minutes when you understand their strengths than you could over years, I feel like. And so it catapults you into relationship with the people around you that you're learning it with. So I just felt very close to that group of people, and Arminda being one of them that was in that group that connected us. So yeah, I know that's not really an aha, but it's just it was such an incredible experience because we don't get to sit in that every day, right?
Exactly. I asked somebody who has this certification back in 2018 after I took the assessment, I was considering getting certified. And he said that he doesn't necessarily use the tool so much with his coaching. But he said it was worth the investment because of what he learned about himself in that training. He said it was so self-reflective. I learned more about myself in that week and how my brain works and what my boundaries need to be and the resources I need around me to help me be successful. That was worth the investment. And I was like, okay. But honestly, I went in kind of skeptical. I went in because I knew I needed some different kind of credential to get my foot in the door to do the things and live my purpose, which was to improve self-reflection and communication in the workplace. As my purpose. And I thought, well, my MBA didn't give me enough. I need a credential. And what I remember, so I went in kind of skeptical, like, I just need this credential. And within about probably the first 30 minutes of the training, I was watching the interaction between the two co-facilitators. And they had their strengths listed on their name tags. So I could see how each one of them led, even without really knowing what the words meant.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking in the first 30 minutes, holy shit, they are tag teaming exactly the way they need to complement each other's talents. This is what building a team looks like. A real productive, thoughtful, inspiring, satisfying, innovative team.
Yeah. Yes.
That was my aha moment.
That's good. I love that it happened so quickly because it is once you, it's like we say it all the time about our equipment here at Vermeer. So what we sell, once you're aware of it, you see it everywhere. It's like everything else. Once you're aware of it, you see it everywhere. It's so much easier to notice. And I think, the strengths are huge in that. Once you just have an awareness of them, it's impossible not to see them in the people you're interacting with.
For sure. Even the people you don't have their strengths in front of you.
Yeah.
Somebody that is collecting a ton of information and asking a ton of questions, you're like, okay, they probably have input.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's a really, really cool tool. But yeah, I do think one of the things I loved was all of the practice facilitation sessions. And obviously you mentioned it's fairly new to me, so I haven't, had years of experience doing that. But when I did get to have them and be on the other side of them with those in my cohort that were practicing, just the insightful questions that were asked and the prompts that got me thinking and had me realizing, the things that I hadn't even given myself permission necessarily to acknowledge. Those were the most impactful pieces of it for me, where I was just.
So what was one in particular? Because I know with mine, it was like that command. I really didn't want to own it because it's been painful. It's been a criticism that I've received so much in my life. So that was mine of, I can own this in a really positive way. And if I really look at the evidence, there are only a handful of times it got in my way. The majority of the time it was wonderful. It was a great tool to use to help people.
Yeah.
So what was yours that you owned?
I think mine's a combination of all of mine. I think I had looked at the strengths as how they impact others. Like, how does this show up for everyone around me? And I had spent less time thinking about, like, how do they show up for myself? And even just that mindset shift of it's not always about how you can influence or impact those, around you through them, but how am I using them towards myself? So it was more about, giving myself permission to have empathy for what I'm going through, to invest time in developing myself, to, like, woo is winning others over. So it's very others focused, but it's also like there's pieces of that I direct inward that are huge. And I had not ever really acknowledged it in that way.
Oh, I love that. So you started thinking about directing your developer at yourself. So for our listeners, do you want to describe what developer looks like for you based on your other talents that are around it?
Yeah. So for me, my developer, it shows up the most frequently or the most clearly in when I'm looking at the people around me and the potential I see in them, and how they have all of this potential to do great things, even sometimes before they realize what it is. And I derive so much satisfaction from seeing someone go from either, not having an awareness of that to I understand it now, and here's where here's where it fits. So it's very externally focused a lot of the time for me on, what investment needs to be made in a person to get them from A to B.
I think about it on a scale of 1 to 10, and developers see people at a 2 or a 3 that are underperforming. And it's not across the board underperforming, but it's in a specific area where they're underperforming. And they, as a developer, you can touch and feel the future state of that person at an 8. They're at a 2 or 3 now. You know exactly what it could look like as an 8. You just, you can see it, you can touch it and feel it. And the beauty of developer is how you get there, which is by celebrating incremental improvement. So how have you applied that to yourself?
Well, it goes back to that, celebrating those incremental improvements, right? And I think I have an idea of what my own potential looks like, or what my capacity might be. And instead of, not celebrating or not acknowledging until I get to that point that I've decided, like, this is where I need to be, but the little things that have gotten me there and acknowledging those little things along the way. Like, you had this positive interaction where you practiced that new skill. That's a win. Let's take 5 seconds to celebrate it before moving on to the next thing that needs to be done, or, the next goal that I have for myself. So yeah, just what you said, just pausing and long enough to acknowledge what those little wins are.
I love that, because you do that for other people. And now you get to direct it at yourself.
And so it's so interesting because it is such a natural, we do these things without thinking about them. That's what makes them our talents. But it is interesting that like it takes a conscious effort for me to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm. So when you think about your experience as getting trained, and now you see the strengths in the people around you, particularly at work, but also at home, you start to see a lot of things that maybe caused conflict or friction for you in the past. What's one of the patterns that you've noticed now? So I'm going to give you an example. When I saw that command, activator, adaptability, the things that make me a big picture viewer and great at starting things and great at getting people to do things and not great at finishing unless I have somebody keeping me accountable to finish. When I saw that, yeah, you don't have the executing domain either right up front. But when I saw that and had a coach walk me through that and started helping me with strategies, I looked back and I saw all of the painful growing experiences I had with particular jobs and particular people and went, that's why she probably had achiever and I was driving her crazy because I'm not goal oriented. Or she probably had responsibility. And that means that she had maybe a pretty rigid view of what responsible behavior looks like. And what I was doing didn't look like responsible behavior to her. So did you have a few of those?
So when I thought about this question, I think I had an interaction shortly after our time together and your coaching, that I felt like because of the groundwork that was laid in what you talked us through, I approached that conversation far differently than I would have before. One, because I felt like I had some more understanding of where that person was coming from. And just even just in the storytelling work that we did, like that opened my eyes to where they were coming from and where their strengths were coming into play, and where mine were coming from and potentially causing, just like you said, some of that friction. Like, this person does not have the relationship building strengths, but is very much on the executing, has some of those strengths like achiever and competition and things where, it was probably frustrating for them to work with me, but it was a conversation that put us back on just a level playing field. We got things out in the open, but I feel like I was able to disarm a little bit of that friction from the beginning because of that understanding I had, and because I acknowledged right away, I apologize if intentionally or unintentionally I've made you feel this way. And that laid the groundwork for the rest of the conversation, and it went extremely well. So I think there's just, there was so much value in that. Just coming from a place of mutual understanding and assuming positive intent that I was missing before truly understanding their strengths.
I love that so much. Are you seeing patterns from the past? Like in a job that you had somebody that you worked with that just rubbed you the wrong way, or you just couldn't get along, or you just had so much angst over that relationship? And what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it's something you mentioned while we were talking earlier. Just it all goes back to that communication, and I am so reliant on positive communication that when that's not another person's focus, it just rubs me the wrong way. Like, if we did not even think about how that was going to be perceived and we just said it, it blows my mind. But that's just because that's where I'm coming from, right? And maybe their strengths do not allow them to think that way. And they bring so much value in a different aspect. And I have to give people a little bit of grace in those situations. But yes, I thought of numerous just miscommunications, whether that's, I hear something through someone else, like, oh, God, nothing gets me going faster than if you didn't just come to me and tell me what you needed to tell me. And I had plenty of those situations before, but it's also because, I value that communication so much that when that value isn't reciprocated, it's hard.
Which again comes back to, if you know that that's yours and not someone else's, being able to realize, oh, that isn't about me at all.
Right. And just because that's the thing I value most doesn't mean that that's what they do. Maybe because of their strengths, they value getting that work done as efficiently as possible. It doesn't matter how it's communicated. Whereas all I can think about is, how is this affecting someone? How is what I'm saying and how I'm saying it affecting those around me? Not everybody thinks that way.
And it just comes back to the first thing that I noticed in my training was how these two women worked together. Using completely opposite strengths. One was fully on the executing domain. The other was almost exclusively relationship building. And they traded sections of the training, but they also had these interactions that helped everyone in the room relate to something that was being said. It's like the best teachers who they don't just lecture or they don't just write on board, but they do both at the same time. And they might have music going. Maybe they're using color. Maybe they have worksheets so the students are actually writing at the same time, because we all learn differently, different modalities, and having those combinations of strengths on a team. So I'm thinking, how would you communicate with that person differently now? Because you clearly have somebody in your head that you don't necessarily want to talk about from your past, that you really struggled with because they were bullet point speakers, and you are not a bullet point speaker. It's like the difference between speaking German and speaking Italian. German is guttural, quick, long.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they're fast talkers, oftentimes it takes a lot longer to say a sentence in German than it does in English most of the time, because there are a lot more words there, and syllables. But then you have somebody who speaks Italian with all the hand gestures, that half of the Italian language isn't even spoken. It's in the chin out and the hands and the expressions, right? So when you think back, how would you do it differently now that you have different language to use?
Yeah, I think I would just have a better perspective walking into the interaction. I think instead of assuming, that person is just gruff or doesn't care or whatever it is that I assume when I don't fully understand, I think just having an awareness of strengths in general has given me the perspective of everyone is walking into every interaction with a unique set of talents and abilities and history behind it, and filters. Yeah. And all the things that have brought them to that point where this is how they naturally think, feel, and behave. And I'm not going to change that in one interaction. So rather than being frustrated by it, how do I just approach it with an understanding that it's not going to be the exact same as me, and that's a valuable thing. And what can I learn from how they interact? And I think I would have just come in with that understanding, and that's something I'm trying to do now that I have a better understanding of the strengths. What can I learn from those around me and the unique abilities that they've been given?
And how can I value what they bring to the table?
Right.
And ask them for help in a way that acknowledges their talents. Yes.
Right. And on the things that I know do not come naturally to me and where I may be weak. And I don't know, I can't think of a negative side of asking someone to contribute what they naturally do well, or acknowledging it. So even starting by acknowledging, hey, I know you have a gift for being analytical, for seeing things from that perspective.
Yeah. Understanding all of the potential snags we're going to hit.
Yes. Yeah. So can you help walk me through those? Like just making people feel valued for what they're bringing. And a lot of times, like we talked about, like you don't even know that these are things that you're doing. So it could be, their first acknowledgement of, oh, this is something I'm actually really good at.
I've been criticized about this my whole life. And now you're telling me it's a
good thing that I take my time to make a decision and think through every possible interaction. Like, yes, my gosh, I wish I was more deliberative, but I'm not. So thank you for bringing that to the table.
Oh, I love that. That's so critical. That is definitely something that I encourage my clients to think about is start with the sentence, you're really good at this and I could use your help.
Yeah. And that disarms people immediately. How are you going to be combative with me when I've started the conversation that way?
I so wish I had this tool. I am immediately going to a woman that I worked for that half my book is about what I learned from that experience. I mean, because we had a complicated relationship. And I learned, it was one of the most painful 2 years in my experience at work. And I learned more from that than I could have learned from anything that went well, right? Yeah. Even though I learned a lot from what goes well too.
Yes.
But I remember one thing in particular about our conflicts, and I can imagine what her strengths are. We haven't seen each other interacted in a long time, but I can look back and think, oh, she probably has responsibility and discipline and consistency, all those things that make you want to do things the same way every time so that it's consistent, so that everybody gets treated fairly. And her version of work looked like sitting at a computer and typing, where my version of work is picking up the phone and making sure I have relationships with people so that they want to do what I'm asking them to do. So they don't have to, because they want to.
Yes.
And that to her isn't what work looked like. And I keep thinking, man, she's so smart. She has great vision. And if I had had this language, I could have started with, you're so good at laying out a plan and knowing where things need to be done and when they need to be done. And show me what you want out of this. If I could have used the language so that I could do things, not the way she wants to do them, but with the language that was understandable to both of us. Man, I think about the suffering that we experienced together. I mean, I know she was suffering too. And I'm not sure that anything I could have said would have changed that. There are some situations where she was going through her own stuff, and a lot of that was just directed at me because of what she was going through. And I can have compassion for that while still knowing that it was wrong. Being bullied is never acceptable. Right. It's never acceptable to treat people shitty.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
If I had had this language.
Yeah.
So you've taken the training. What is something you're doing in your organization to help keep this language fresh? And a second part of this question, I can come back to it, is when we did the public speaking workshop and I incorporated StrengthsFinder, how did that influence the rest of what you're doing with your team?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So something we're doing as an organization to keep it fresh. So first of all, everybody in our organization is taking the assessment, and we're having a session with teams to walk through what it is, what their results are, and how they interact as a team. So that's kind of the first step in all of it, and where we're starting. So first of all, just giving everyone exposure to it and to the language. And by the end of this year, everyone will have had it. And beyond that, we have a grid of our entire team for everyone who has taken it and available to everyone who has taken it so they can see the spread of where everybody falls, which is, I think it's super fun. But we're also now implementing a little. And now we're, because of you gave us stickers during our workshop that had our strengths on them. And my team walked away with that saying, how can we make these more visible for everybody? Because I thought that was such a great tool. And so we have little plaques now that are going to sit on everyone's desks with their top 5, or a magnet for we have technicians, so it can go on their toolbox, or our sales guys in their trucks or wherever, but it's going to be front and center. Yeah. Which is something I had back at a previous role. We had them all visible, and I thought it was great that you could walk into, an interaction with your colleague and see right there, like, here are my top 5. I'm reminded of them.
I need to tell him the history of this project.
That's right. Yeah. Just that reminder, right? To keep it fresh in your head. So those are some things we're going to try, and see. It's still very fresh to our entire team. There were very few people in the organization who had exposure to it already. So it's already been just so fun to provide that opportunity to have that common language. And I can see it just as we continue, down our journey, being a continuous learning and continuous reminder for our entire team. But I hope to, someday walk down the hall and hear that, right? Like, oh, I walked into that interaction with them knowing they had context, so I changed how I delivered my message. And that's the dream, right? So yes, hopefully we'll get there. But remind me what your second question was.
So when you hired me to do public speaking workshop for the executive leadership team, and I said, I can do it, but I could do it better if I have everybody's strengths, because then I can customize what the expectations are, what strategies we share, depending on people's natural talents. Yeah. So I think it surprised you a little. Did it surprise you a little that I thought that would be helpful?
Honestly, I thought it made sense. Even just for you as a facilitator to have an understanding of what our strengths were. But I do think I was pleasantly surprised by how beautifully you wove it into everything that you were sharing with us. And as we're telling these stories to each other, learning how to be better presenters and to connect with each other, that you so easily could point out those unique things in each of my team members in the first 10 minutes of knowing them. Like, it was your first day meeting everybody, and you were able to say, hey, Stephen, I see your relator coming out and how you've developed this team and put these people in place around you, where he had never acknowledged that in himself. Like, he just thought, I just know what seats to put people in. But it's like, not everybody knows how to do that naturally, right? So I love the connection that it brings. And I think it really did drive home your point, which is that connecting with others is the main goal of any speaking you're doing, right? Is creating that connection. And I loved how you shared, I'm going off on a tangent here, but how you shared, if you can shift your mindset from how's it going to go for me to what am I bringing to my audience, or what value can I bring to them? You're going to be way less stressed going into those experiences or those interactions, because it's not about you anymore. It's about connecting and what I have to give to you. It's about what's in it for you. So I think that mentality was just huge for a lot of our team members, but also, I shared with you that my dad passed away a few days after our workshop. And as I was preparing his eulogy, it was in my head, like, how can I connect? Which seems like such a silly example of public speaking, but it was public speaking. No. Yeah. So
probably the hardest public speaking you'll ever do.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot at stake there.
So much. Yeah. But it changed my mindset walking into it, because it was not about me. It was about, how can I connect with all these people who are here who loved him and just want to hear, some stories about him. And honestly, my goal was to imagine my strengths. My goal is to make people laugh a little bit and to remember some of the positive things about my dad that I loved. And so going in with that mindset, I was able to get it done. I wouldn't have been able to do it without that, I don't think. So I love the God's timing and all of that, like that we got to be together and have that fresh in my mind. And then, yeah, like you said, deliver probably the hardest thing I'll have to do.
Mm. Just got to chill. All the hairs on the back of my neck went up because timing is such an interesting thing and so critical if we see it for what it is. So we do this training that incorporates StrengthsFinder into pretty much everything because everything is about communication. Everything is about relationships, because why do what we're doing if it's not about relationships? That's your focus. How are you using this now? Obviously you used it for one of the hardest public speaking things you'd ever have to do. But how are you incorporating this now? And are you seeing your teammates incorporate it, particularly as somebody who understands StrengthsFinder because you've taken the training?
Yeah. Yes. I think, yes, I have seen, I mean, even in the example I shared earlier of that interaction, it was with one of my teammates that did the workshop with me. And so I think they came in with a new respect for me and what I bring to the table in the same way that I came with that kind of respect for them. So I saw it at play, right away in that interaction. And it was even acknowledged a few times in our conversation. Like, I understand that this is what you bring, this is what you bring to the table. And it was so refreshing. It was so refreshing. And something that without that language, without that time together, and that honestly, the storytelling aspect too of what we did, I wouldn't have, neither of us would have approached it as well. So it was actually a conversation I had planned to have before that. And I'm so grateful, back to the timing, that I didn't until after we had that time together. So again, another grateful for how that worked out. But yes, I'm just hearing, just more understanding from my team in our interactions with each other. And I feel like it established a depth of relationship that we maybe didn't have before. And, a piece of that is just being together in that room. But I think a piece of it is the understanding that came from recognizing each other's strengths in that way, and the storytelling piece and the connecting piece, that if that was our focus for the day, how could we not walk away feeling a deeper connection with each other?
I love that. It reminds me of our first conversation when you were asking me questions about what I could do in terms of public speaking. And I said, Lindsey, ultimately, I know we have to have specific objectives, measurable to some extent. But how do you want people to feel when they leave? What do you want people to be talking about? And what you just described is pretty much exactly what you said when we talked a few months back, before everything happened, before you even contracted with me.
Yeah.
So you had that vision. Wow. That's really cool. I'm so impressed.
Well,
not everyone has that vision. So you made it happen.
Well, thank you to you for being the majority of the reason it did.
So let's wrap this up and come back to you as a newly experienced coach with that tool, and a coach in general, because now it's not just mentoring when you are guiding people and influencing people. Now you're coaching them actively. So what's next for you? How do you see this playing out? What do you want to do with your newfound confidence, consciousness, language? Where do you see this going for you?
I love that they use the term coach, strengths coach, versus, like mentor, facilitator, even that language, because I feel like coaching is such a picture of like real time feedback. You're there in the moment. I mean, if you think about a basketball coach or, any other athletic coach, like they're not sitting on the sideline and just twiddling their thumbs. Like, they are up next to you in the action, providing feedback. And so I just think that's such a huge, there's so much value in seeing our roles as coaches from that perspective. And, it's about watching interactions, being a part of interactions, and providing that feedback and that language and understanding in the moment when it's fresh, not waiting around. So I know it's not a super clear, like, here's where I want to be, but what I want to practice is really having that coaching mindset in the interactions I have with my teammates and with the people who are just seeing it or understanding it for the first time, and helping them see the impact of what it is that they bring to the table, and to not wait to do that, but to give that feedback as I'm seeing it. Like, hey, once I know this about you, I'm seeing this strength come out in this interaction or in this project. I saw you use this. I think that's awesome. Like, even if it's just a quick, how cool is it that you got to use that? That's what I want to do.
I love that. I love that because it's two things that you brought up earlier in the conversation. One is that sometimes we don't know we're using it. Most of the time we don't know we're using it, and it takes somebody else pointing it out. Mm-hmm. And second, that you are going to actively look at it. You talked about target fixation. Mm-hmm. Once you start looking for these things, then you'll start seeing them. Like when you started working for Vermeer, you didn't remember seeing Vermeer equipment, but now you see it everywhere. Well, I see your future as a coach very brightly. I see your developer really working toward improving your own perceived changes that you need. And also, what I'm visualizing is you in like 10 years really leading a team and ensuring that everyone on that team feels like they can do their best work. Because as my friend Marilyn Delborg-Delphis wrote in her book, everybody wants to love their job. And I see you being part of that solution to a major engagement issue that we face across the country, but globally too.
Yes, I love that. And yeah, whenever people ask me what I do, that's what I say is I'm here to try to make your experience at work the best that it can be every single day, to improve it a little bit day by day. Like, and I have to explain that because nobody understands what I do. So that's what I have to say. So that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make your experience the best it can be. So I hope that I am getting to continue to do that work.
That's a perfect description. And maybe the next thing is to tell a story about what that looks like.
Yeah. Back to that storytelling.
I brought in this person and we talked about this, or I had this great conversation with this person who was dissatisfied with some aspect of their job, and this is how we improved it together. And this is how we're measuring that improvement. Tell that story so they can see themselves in it. She really does care about me. She wants to see me develop and succeed and thrive.
Yeah.
Me too. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Sarah. It was a breath of fresh air.
Well, listeners, you're in luck. In the show notes associated with this podcast episode at elkinsconsulting.com, you'll see links to Lindsey's, the website for Vermeer Heartland, and for Lindsey's LinkedIn, and whatever other links that she shared with me in our pre-show conversation. And listeners, now it's your turn. Even without using a tool, an assessment like StrengthsFinder or DISC, what questions can you ask people around you, particularly the ones that you clearly think differently from? What questions can you ask to get at the heart of why they do what they do and how they do it? Because when you can understand their language, you don't have to change who you are, but you do need to learn a little bit about how to speak it. Thanks for listening.
You must keep on trying. Smile what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.